light, absolutely essential to any good photo or video.
Hey everyone, today's video is going to be a little bit different than usual. It's going to be all about photography. I'm going to give you some of my tips for taking good pictures. So tune in to the rest of the video to get those all essential tips. In this video we'll be talking about aperture. Aperture is all about how much light hits the lens and the sensor. So here you have my camera, and the sensor can be found just behind the lens once you take it out. Generally speaking, the more light a lens lets into the sensor, the better it is. Each lens has an F number written on it. So for example, this is one of the more standard kit lenses. It's a variable aperture, so it has 3.5 to 5.6. This is a 40mm prime pancake lens, so it has a fixed 2.8 STM. This is a 10 to 18mm, which is what I use for vlogging usually. It's a 4.5 to 5.6. As you might be able to tell, the fixed prime lenses actually give better aperture performance. However, they lack the zoom functionality that is afforded by the zoom lenses. So what you have to keep in mind, particularly when using lenses with any kind of zoom functionality, is that the aperture is variable, so it will let in more light at the wider end and less light at the sort of narrower end, if you will. All DSLR and the like cameras generally have something called an aperture priority mode, so that can be found on this control dial. So you'll need to get to it usually by spinning it, as is the case in most of these cameras, and once you're on it you can access it. This mode allows you to prioritize aperture, so meaning that you can isolate subjects more. This is an example of a picture that I've taken in Regent's Park Canal, where I used a pancake 40mm lens with a 2.8 aperture. In this picture you can see the leaves are really isolated from the background, and the background is actually blurred. This effect is usually called bokeh. This next picture is taken with an aperture of 5.6, so as you can see the subject is still isolated, but not quite as much as the 2.8. Now this picture is taken with an aperture of f10. This means that you can make out far more of the background. Although your eye is slightly less drawn to the actual leaves, I do feel that the background can give more context to pictures like this. So today I'm going to be talking about aperture, which is all related to light and how much light gets into your camera and how much is actually used by it. So the lower the aperture, or the F number, the more light your lens lets into the camera, and essentially you get better low light performance mixed with also more isolation of individual subjects in your shots. So next I'm going to try to find some interesting, it's relatively interesting subjects that we could take pictures of in varying apertures. I will change to my other lens, which is a 2.8 aperture lens, and that way you'll see a better range, and I'll be able to actually show you, and you'll be able to see directly in the results what the differences are. With the isolation of subjects, you also get that talked about bokeh effect, which is where you get the blurred out background behind
people, particularly where you're taking pictures of people or portraits. Alright, so let's go and find some things to take pictures of.
In these pictures you can see as I scroll through the apertures from f2.8 all the way up to f10, you can see that you can see more and more of the background and less of the foreground is actually isolated. Once again at f2.8 you have the blurred bokeh background, and as you scroll through you will find that there's no more blurred background. In fact, you can make out that there's a person in the background.
Metropolitan Line train to Uxbridge. Change for Circle and Hammersmith and City Line services via Paddington.
Right, so we're on to the next shoe location, which is Barbican.
So once again in this picture at 2.8 the eyes are drawn to the actual tree, whereas in the following picture at f10 you can see that you pay attention to the whole image rather than just the tree. That brings this week's video to an end. I hope you enjoyed it and perhaps even learned something. Let me know in the comments if you have anything to add or any tips of your own.